Well, here we are again. I hope everybody's having a great weekend so far. It's always kind of tickled me because you know that when I say weekend, I'm taping sometime during the week. But the show's always seen on Saturday. Although sometimes it does come on during the week as a fill-in, which is kind of nice. I'm glad that the studios think so much of the Concerned Forum that they use us as a fill-in. And we've got a very interesting show. I have some guests that might be familiar to some of you folks out there. But before I let these gentlemen introduce themselves, I just want to say something that I've been pondering. I was out for a few days last week. I was under the weather, so to speak. And being in that shape, it gave me a chance to, how should I say, kind of think about things and where we stand right now, where we stand as a country, where I stand as an individual. And I look and I ask myself, what happens, what makes a people, any group of people, ready to basically commit war upon themselves? Because to a large extent, that's what we've done. Now, the bad part, that's done, okay? That can't be changed. Plus the fact that in America, we don't have a true democracy. We don't even have a true republic anymore because of the fact that wealth has come so much to play into how we select those who would rule over us. Or I should say, who rule for us. But you have to really wonder if people that voted the way that they did, if they're having second thoughts. I know that there's some who are. When we look at a president that he doesn't seem to understand what the Civil War was all about, I think that that's truly frightening. And I'll tell you why. Does it take bread off of anyone's plate? Well, no. But I think what we have to keep in mind, and what too many of us have forgotten, is that a country is not just a thing. It's not a bank statement. A country is supposed to be a gathering of ideals. And maybe I sound a bit, what's the proper term, patriotic, or maybe I'm too much of an idealist. But I believe that in spite of all our faults in this country, that there are certain goals that we stand for and that we are supposed to try and reach. Now, Lincoln saw that. He wasn't perfect by any means, far from it. But you know, one of the things, or I should say the thing I always admired the most about Lincoln was that he recognized that there was a necessity for change. When it came to him, he saw it. And in that regard, I think that he's far ahead of this buffoon that we presently have in the White House. I hope we make it through all of this. I really hope we do. But you know, if we don't, America will have no one but itself to blame. Now, I have two interesting gentlemen here, and like I said, some of you out there might remember these gentlemen from a previous engagement that they had on the Concerned Forum. And I'm going to let these brothers introduce themselves to you and what their program is all about. Gentlemen?
My name is Naeem Al-Uqda. I'm the secretary for the Brooklyn Mosque here in New York under the leadership of Silas Muhammad.
Okay.
My name is Dewan Madyoun. I'm a minister / captain under the leadership of the Honorable Silas Muhammad, the Law Foundation of Islam, here in Brooklyn, New York. And part of our program is to unite all of our grassroots leaders under the umbrella of Afro-Descendant Nation for the purposes
Excuse me.
of going after the multitude of our people, to warn them and to let them know that a new nation is here on the horizon, a nation that is for them. It's called the Afro-Descendant Nation. And you don't have to be a Muslim to be in this nation. All you have to be is a black person that have experienced the after effects of the transatlantic slave trade. Whatever effects that you are experiencing as a result of slavery, the post-traumatic slave syndrome, if you're feeling those effects, and I'm sure every black person in America is feeling that have descendants from slaves are feeling that. We're here to unite all of us and let you know the good news that it's time to leave. It's time to build a government that we can call our own. And unity among ourselves as a people is what's going to do that. And this is the main thing that the U.S. government have always feared, is the unification of black people going across the spectrum of politics and religion. But we do have one thing that we can unite under now. We all are experiencing the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and therefore we all are deserving of reparations. And Mr. Silas Muhammad have spearheaded the fight for reparation and have made significant strides in improvement in the UN as it relates to bringing our problem to the World Court. I should say into the world attention, certain human rights bodies inside of the UN. So this is what we're here to do, and that is to wake our people up and to unite them under the Afro-Descendant Nation.
Now, a lady called me after the last time you gentlemen were on, and she was, well, she asked a few questions. One of the questions that she asked was, isn't this kind of like going back to the 60s and 70s, in that you're talking about a type of segregation of black Americans?
Well, let me correct that. We're not talking about segregation. We're talking about total and complete separation. See, Mr. Silas Muhammad has made it very clear that we want no part of the prophesied doom of the United States of America. We recognize that in order to be successful as a people, that we must make a complete exodus out of America into a land of our own, or to a land where our people are and live among our own people and establish our own government. Now, having said that, I must also add that the Afro-Descendant Nation already have a structured government set up, for we do have a legislative branch, we do have a judicial branch, and we do have an executive branch. And these are the main elements that is needed to run and form a government and operate a government. So here's the reason why Mr. Silas Muhammad is demanding from the U.S. government to give us air-going and sea-going vessels, and to supply us with everything we need to build infrastructure in the land that we're going to be going into, to build modern buildings, to build modern facilities, to build roads, highways, factories, and hospitals, and everything that we need to function as an independent government, where we could do for ourselves and go for ourselves. And based on that, we believe that in a matter of 50 to 60 years, that we will start seeing a major transformation as it relates to our people and how we behave and how we conduct ourselves as a nation of people. We believe we can correct the ills that is afflicting our people while we're in our own land. We don't believe we can correct those ills here in America.
Okay, so before I say anything else, you might want to inform our listeners, our viewers, who Cyrus Muhammad is.
Well, That's a very good question, sir. And I like to go into a little history as it relates to Mr. Silas
Go right
Muhammad.
ahead.
Because a lot of people don't understand the Lost Foundation of Islam and how it transitioned. So in a nutshell, I would like to give them an understanding of the Lost Foundation of Islam and how it transitioned into where we are now. During the time that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had passed away, we do understand that his son Wallace D. Muhammad took over and he changed the theology of the Lost Foundation of Islam, and he actually dismantled the Lost Foundation of Islam. Having dismantled the Lost Foundation of Islam, a lot of Muslims who didn't believe in what Wallace said, they went back into what we call the grave, which means the old way of living. Okay, so about 2.5 years after Wallace had done that, Mr. Silas Muhammad rose up and issued a declaration of spiritual war and wrote to Wallace D. Muhammad and took it to him personally to have it hand delivered to him, declaring spiritual war on him and letting him know that he, Silas Muhammad, was the spiritual son of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that he was here to restore the Lost Foundation of Islam and to give back to all of the Muslims who believed in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad all that belonged to them. Now, when Mr. Silas Muhammad did this, I was one of the early followers of Mr. Silas Muhammad when he delivered that letter. At this time, we were passing out flyers to our people in Chicago, letting our people know that Silas Muhammad is here on the scene to resurrect the Lost Foundation of Islam. I personally asked a question of one of the ministers of Mr. Silas Muhammad. I asked, was Minister Louis Farrakhan going to come and help us? I was told this. I was told that Minister Louis Farrakhan will not come and help us, that he's going to break away from Wallace and he's going to go in his own direction. 2 months after that minister communicated that to me, I beheld that exact event. He made the announcement that he was going to break away from Wallace, and he did. And he went in his own direction because Mr. Silas Muhammad sought to unite with him and told him this: Brother Farrakhan, why don't we come together? You can be the spokesperson since most of the people know you, and we can get our nation back together. I believe in that conversation, if my memory serves me right, Mr. Farrakhan said this to Mr. Silas Muhammad: Brother Silas. Now, at this time, the Honorable Silas Muhammad already had Muslims standing. All right, he had Muslims standing up again, the FOI, the GC, the MGT. He had them standing up again, selling papers and doing work out there in behalf of the Lost Foundation of Islam. But Minister Farrakhan said this to Mr. Silas Muhammad: Brother Silas, I'm glad to see that you have the Muslims rising up again and standing up. But you have your work to do, and I have my work to do. And at that point, you had 3 major splits in the Lost Foundation of Islam, and it goes in this order: Wallace, Silas Muhammad, then Louis Farrakhan. But because Minister Louis Farrakhan was the most popular one, most of the people went with him.
Now, let me ask you, did this come about before or after? I remember, because I was in D.C. at the time, and I had already come back from overseas, and I was working in the government, and I remember the Million Man March. Now, did this occur before or after that particular march?
No, this was back in this occurred quite way earlier than the Million Man March. We talking about 1977.
Ah, okay.
See, Minister Farrakhan broke away from Wallace in 1977 after he had heard about Silas Muhammad standing up, because Minister Farrakhan was with Wallace, and he was teaching the teachings of Wallace Muhammad.
Okay.
It wasn't until he heard about this man Silas Muhammad standing up Muslims again, and the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
it caused him to stand.
That is what caused Minister Farrakhan and other Muslims to stand up after Silas Muhammad rose up. Because keep this in mind, the word was out that anybody that opposed Wallace, it was a death threat out there. Anybody that opposed Wallace. During this crucial time, Silas Muhammad was the only man that had the courage to go by himself and challenged Wallace D. Muhammad and revealed to him the truth about who he was and who his father was, and the mission of his father, and what he, Wallace Muhammad, was born to do, and that was to bring about a judgment of the followers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So this was way before the Million Man March. Like I said, because Mr. Farrakhan was the most popular one, most of the people gathered onto him. But Silas Muhammad already had Muslims rising up again, teaching and waking our people up, because I was one of his early followers back in Chicago.
I see. Now, because that's another thing. I've had a few people ask me why I have Muslims on my program. Well, and I'll say this again for the sake of my viewers. One of the things about the Concerned Forum, my job basically is to expose people to ideas. It does not necessarily mean that I have to agree with those ideas, but if these ideas are out there in the community, then people need to know about them. They need to know why people think the way they do, and what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And that goes for people from the Nation of Islam, that goes for Republicans, that goes for Democrats, that goes for liberals, that goes for conservatives. Now, me myself, I happen to be a registered Democrat and more aligned with a socialist Democrat. In other words, I'm somebody that you would probably find in Germany or Sweden. Unfortunately, we don't have social democrats like that here in the United States, aside from Bernie Sanders. So I basically find myself a Democrat, and I'm satisfied with that. But I'm not going to try and force other people to basically think the way I think. But my job, I feel, as being a part of the media, is to, like I said, bring forth all the ideas so that people can know what's going on. Because I feel that one of the problems that we have in this country, and that just doesn't just go for African Americans, that goes for white people, the Hispanic community, the Asian community. One of the big problems that we have is that we really are not informed. And I would say that that's particularly a bad situation for both white Americans and particularly black Americans. So like I said, this is a knowledge tree here. And I want people to be able to get that knowledge. Next week, I might have somebody from the Republican Party up here. The point is that people start thinking. Because at the beginning of this program, I spoke and I bemoaned the fact of and I use the term again, buffoon that we have in the White House. Remember, that's how we have come to this state. The position that we're in now in America, with a buffoon in the White House, because people didn't think, because they're not aware. So, come on, Jim, tell me some more.
I would like to make a statement. We are Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
We're not promoting a religion at all. I could be Christian, I can be Jewish. We're actually promoting more of anything, a political statement. We're talking about a government. We're talking about reparations. We're talking about being redressed for harm that has been done to us as a whole.
Okay, now.
We're not putting forward religion.
Right.
And I hope we're not scaring people away because of that.
No. Believe me, if they can sit up and listen to me, they can listen to anyone. But I think I'm scary enough for anybody. But all kidding aside, I'm glad that you hit that key gong right there when you talked about reparations, because you have many groups in the United States, and not just here in the United States, but across the world, especially talking about the Western world, that have raised this subject about reparations. Now, my idea of reparations will probably be found to be different from these gentlemen. But the idea of some form of reparations, I don't think that is, how should I say, that is not something that should be out of the realm of possibility or the realm of logic. The big problem, and I want you viewers to understand this, the big problem that we have in America is that when it comes to the relations between African Americans and the United States, there has never been a full-throated, full-fledged recognition of the terrible, the hellacious damage that was done to African people in this Middle Atlantic slave trade, or as they call it, the triangular trade. Slavery, in one form or another, has existed as soon as humankind began to live in cities. That in itself, that is not, the way I see it, that's not in itself the issue. The issue is how this thing called slavery, how it was dealt with here in the United States. I mean, hell, ancient Rome had slavery. The slavery itself is not the issue. The issue is how black people were dealt with, because we were made, the African American people were made to suffer long after the chains, the physical chains, were removed. And see, that is the stain that is on the American book. That whole thing of racial hatred, the idea that one group of people is superior to another, all that madness, okay? And when you sit down and when you talk to any scientist, any competent scientist will tell you that the nature of life is Africa. Mankind began in Africa. The oldest remains to be found on this planet are in Africa. Civilization spread outwards from Africa. And yet, especially in the Western countries, African people were the ones that were basically made to be second-class human beings. I think that the big problem that we have, and I'm not just talking about America, that's something else that we have forgotten, because you have to include Britain, you have to include the European countries, and remember, most of the people that were brought in slavery from Africa over to the Western Hemisphere did not come to the United States. They went to Brazil. Now, what do you gentlemen have to say about that?
Well, we were dropped off at many places, and from there, some of them came to the Americas. We were dropped off all throughout the diaspora. That's a correct statement. Everywhere throughout the diaspora, we were dropped off.
Right, but I'm saying the majority.
Yeah, majority, no doubt, Brazil. But see, the system of slavery will have to be understood, and this is something that we're trying to communicate to our people, and that is this. As a result of slavery, what occurred with us on a physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual level is that everything that you were about as a natural human being on this earth was taken from you or beaten out of you and destroyed. You came here as one man and as one woman living a particular kind of culture, serving a particular kind of God, speaking a particular kind of language, and all of that you were forced to discontinue under force, brute force. This was the beginning of the destruction of your rights as a human being. So now to take all of that from you and then to insert into your mind his way of life, which is his culture, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, Halloween, etc., etc. To take your religion from you and insert his religion in there, Christianity. To take your God, whatever that God was that you were worshiping before you were brought here to America, to take that God from you and insert his white Jesus God into your mind. What he has actually, in other words, to take your even language, your mother's tongue from you, and then to force you to speak his language. And now to do that, what has he just done? Let's look at the deep element, the deep harm of what he has just done. What he has just done is he has taken his mind and put it into yours. So when you look at black people today, what you see are not really black people. What you see are black-skinned people with white minds. So we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Easter, we celebrate Thanksgiving, giving thanks on Thanksgiving where they murdered and killed Indians. Okay, we celebrate that holiday with the mind of a white man's mind, of a Caucasian man's mind, not our own mind. Okay, so we speak his language and we do everything that he do. So he has been our teacher for over 400 years, and so therefore, when you look at us today, many of us hate ourselves. Now, this is the psychological effect of the institution of slavery, whereas black people hate ourselves. We hate the fact that we're blacks. Some of us are trying to get blue eyes. Some of us are trying to get long, skinny nose because we don't like how our nose looks. Some of us are dyeing our hair blonde. Some of us are bleaching our skin. This is indicative of a people who hate themselves. We are people that are lost from who we really are as a result of the destruction of our rights as a human being. And this is why we are not asking for reparation. Mr. Gum, let's be clear, and I want your audience to know this. We're not saying that America give us some form of reparation because it's like saying, well, whatever you give us, we will accept. No, we have a demand. We have a list of demands. America, this is what we want, because you can never restore what you've done to us. You can never give us back our mother's tongue. So because you cannot do that, U.S. government, here's our list of demands. Give us this. And then that would uplift the burden of reparations on you. Meet our demands. So we're not asking for no handouts. We're not begging America for anything. We have placed a demand on the U.S. government, which is why we're going to the UN for UN assistance in this, not to no Supreme Court or to Congress, where they still have John Conyers' bill from over 20 years. 30 years. They've been trying to. That bill haven't moved from where it's been.
Yeah, I remember Conyers with that bill. Tell me something. Who are there any other black organizations? We'll put it this way. What organizations besides yours are involved in this thing about going to the UN?
Well, you have NCOBRA, you have other black reparations group that are speaking out about reparations and trying to make their way into the UN. But Silas Muhammad, along with 19 other leaders from throughout the diaspora, they all have went to the United Nations as one people to voice their grievances about reparations and to unite.
Now, I'll tell you, there is, I did come across some information. I'm trying to remember what countries, Barbados or Jamaica. There are a few nations that are populated primarily by people of African descent that are basically picking up the banner of reparations. They've gone to the United Nations. I am aware of that. they've also, there's something going on, if I'm not mistaken, in England, in London. There was
yes, that's correct.
Yes,
something
sir.
going on about. So this is not, how should I say to my viewers out there, this is
It's
not some
isolated.
kind of pie in the sky. There are active governments, smaller governments, because we're talking about mostly out of the Caribbean, and
Europe.
I think, was it Belize? One or two countries in South America, Central and South America, that are involved in this. So this is not some type of pie in the sky dream sequence. This is real. This is real. Now, like a few other people I spoke to on the phone, myself, I don't consider myself, I am what I am, what it says, well, I don't have a, it's a funny thing. I've traveled the world. I've never had a passport, and I never had to have one because, being military. But I'm an American. Now, I'm not one of those folks, like one of those black people that you will see up there on the stage of Donald Trump, okay? I'm not that kind of American. In other words, I'm not a fool. I say I'm an American well aware of the harm and the damage and the suffering and the tears that term, I am an American, what that means. And it's exactly because of those tears and harm that I know my people have gone through, that there are many black Americans who would say, well, why are we going to just walk out and let these people have it, let some other people have it all? We've already been here for what, actually, over 500 years when you count the Spaniards and the Portuguese. Why aren't we just walking away from everything that our ancestors fought and died for? Now, what do you say to folks like that who raise that issue?
Well, I will say this. The distinction between the Afro-descendant nation and Mr. Silas Muhammad, as it relates to other groups, I've listened to their take on reparations.
Excuse me. I got to keep looking at the clock because, see, I feel myself being dragged deeper and deeper. And I will not leave here on time if I don't keep up with the time here.
Okay, so I'll be sweet. So,
Okay.
so Mr. Silas Muhammad is this here. What we want to correct and save our people from self-destruction, which is taking place here right now. When you look at the mass killings of our people, we realize that we have a problem. Okay, we also realize that we cannot solve the problem here in America because we're living inside of another man's house who will not allow us to do what we have to do in order to rid our people of these problems. So we have to have our own home. We have to have our own house, our own land in order to begin to correct what's going on with our people and make our people out of a better people than what we are now. We've tried staying here in America, and we tried building things up here in America, only to have white America to infiltrate those institutions and those entities to destroy them, turn us against one another, have us fighting against one another. It cannot be done here, Mr. Gomes. If we want to stop the gang violence, we cannot do it here in America. If we want to bring about an end to unemployment, black youth walking around killing each other and selling drugs, we cannot do it here.
Self-hate.
Our salvation, and this must be understood, our salvation is not here in America. For if we close the wealth gap in America, and if we close the got education, say we got money now, we got education, who's still ruling America? who still have the power? That means the Caucasian government still has the power. Although you've closed the wealth gap, although we got educated black people, but even our educated black people are being killed at the hands of white cops. You know, Bill Cosby's son, look at what happened to him. Forrest Whitaker, look at what happened to him in the store. He was accused of trying to steal something. And the store owner held him up, trying to search him and all of that, called the police and everything, if my memory serves me right, as it relates to that. So we still don't have justice here in spite of us closing the wealth gap. You understand what I'm saying? So we don't want to just close the wealth gap. We want to control our own money. So Mr. Gums, if we're in our own land, that means if you're a hero, we could put you on our money. It don't be George Washington on there. It could be Hero Gums. See, but we can't do that in America.
Okay, well, okay. Now, the other person, where would, you know, this idea that you talk about black Americans going someplace else, where would that someplace else be?
Anywhere where among our own people that will accept us and offer us land where we could build our own government on that land. For we have something to offer them and they have something to offer us. And there are many of our people that want us to come home. There are some of our people in Africa that would like us to come back. But we're not going back to be under no other kind of government. We're going back as a government with our own governmental structure in place with laws that govern us. Because without laws, then you cannot have a real government. You cannot have a government.
Oh yeah, right. It's always going to be chaos if you don't have laws.
Exactly. So therefore, black people don't have to worry about living among themselves like you're afraid of all black government or what's going to happen. Don't be afraid. You don't have to be afraid to live among yourself. You will get more justice living up on our own system than we will ever get living here in America. We will have more respect from our own living among ourselves than we are getting here in America. You brought up the issue of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln realized that black people would never get the respect that we're due, that we're supposed to get as a people living among his people. So therefore, him and Mr. Sherman, I believe, set aside some land. This is the 40 acres and a mule that we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me, because that's kind of a pet thing of mine. What happened? Originally, they tried to carry this fantasy. Funny, what's his name? Buffoon, Trump. That he brought that up. Of course, he gets everything ass backwards. I'm surprised he can say his name without tripping over his feet. But what essentially happened, although, like I said, Lincoln was by no means a liberal, but he was against slavery for a lot of good reasons. And what happened when the Civil War started, he was bending over backwards to try and tell the world that, hey, this is about union. This is about trying to take rebellious states and put them back in the union. This is a lawful attempt to stop an insurrection, right? And what he told blacks, because blacks had already gotten the idea, they already knew, well, once this starts, this is going to be our ticket on the way to ending slavery. And he called a group of the men, black ministers, and said, listen, unfortunately, many of my people could not just get used to the idea of treating you people decently. And let's try and set up some, areas, what you now call the Dominican Republic, Haiti, or as it was called back then, Saint Dominique, their spots in Central America, even possibly trying to reopen the whole Liberian question. And the black ministers, and just to show you, you'll probably get the same reaction now. We'll say, well, hey, wait a minute, we put blood in this land also. We have skin in this game also. And finally, due to the fact that the North was actually getting its butt whipped, he said, well, we're going to have to do something to change this war into a simple war of union, into a war for human freedom. And that's how this whole business about Lincoln the Emancipator came about. Because it's not so much of the Emancipation Proclamation, but what he did, he gave the Civil War a human face. He said this is not just about trying to bring Georgia and the Carolinas and the rest back into the Union. This is about the fight for the dignity of man. And what happened, and I'll tell you quite frankly, if this plan had been allowed to go to its fruition, I honestly don't believe that you would have had the racial problems that we've had in this country since the Civil War. The idea, I believe it was it Ben Wade and a few other Northern generals, basically they came up with the idea with the Freedmen's Bureau of the 40 acres and 2 mules. Basically to take the land that the black slaves had been working, the Gone with the Wind plantations, take that land from the treasonous, rebellious southern plantation owners and cut it up among the slave families who have been working the land sometimes for generations, and create a free, independent class of black farmers who, by the way, voted Republican, okay, in the South. Unfortunately, what happened, and there's always that unfortunately, isn't it, when we talk about race in this country, unfortunately what happened, the great stab in the back with the Republican Party did in order to get their guy in the White House. Had the same kind of situation that we had, remember in 2000 with the votes and that whole nonsense. Well, making a long story short, the Republican Party, who was running the country at the time, gave into the South. The South wanted one guy in the cabinet. They got the postmaster general, and they wanted the Union troops to be pulled out of the South and let them take care of the black question. And when that happened in 1877, as the Union troops marched out of Alabama and Texas and South Carolina, for the most part, the program of the 40 acres and 2 mules got scrapped. And that's what happened. That's the true story. And I look upon that. Now, I don't agree with you guys, but I do understand what it is that you are trying, what you're trying to create. I can't see that as being the answer, but I do see what you're talking about in terms of what created this problem. I think that if we had had the opportunity and if we had been let alone and allowed to keep those 40 acres and those 2 mules, I think that we would have wound up being just like any other immigrant group. But especially in the South, and not to change the subject, but this mania, okay, as what you say about blacks and whites, the South bears the large part of the burden for this. After the Civil War, a lot of people don't know this, we had almost reached a point in this country where, people, black and white, were actually starting to live like human beings. But the South, through their politicians, through their authors, okay, their newspaper people, constantly writing poisonous, out-and-out lies about the newly freed slaves. That basically what they were able to do was basically make the whole country hate black people. And if you read some of this stuff that I've been, fortunate enough to read, you can go sit in the Library of Congress and read some of the things that were written about black people in the 1880s, and then the Supreme Court, and what was that, I think it was 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, which enshrined separate but equal. These are the things that have put us on this present course to nowhere that we are on today. And as far as what you're talking about, because there's people like, I'm so glad that SOB is no longer on television, at least not for now. What's his name? O'Reilly. It's funny, a guy named O'Reilly got the nerve to talk about other groups of people, but that's another story. But when he talks about, look at what blacks are doing in Chicago and the death and destruction, well, guess what? That is about self-hate, because unfortunately, and this is true, and no matter what you feel about reparations, we can't turn our back on that. We can't, hold our head like it doesn't exist. In the black community, there is a great deal of self-hatred that has to be dealt with. How that's going to happen, I think probably wiser heads than myself will have to come across with some type of ideas. But it's there, and we have to call it for what it is. When you have a 20-year-old shooting down a 15-year-old and vice versa for absolutely nothing, that's something that needs to be dealt with. And, everybody talks about Barack Obama. I would just say that I wish that Mr. Obama had concentrated much more on the place where he lived at, there in Chicago, and had done much more for, in trying to alleviate the plight of African American men. Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, what I wanted to do is it was a point I was about to make about Mr. Lincoln. Mm-hmm. When he realized that blacks were going to actually be here, and he discussed it among his constituents, here's what he said, and this is our position to this day. Let us keep them here as underlings. And until this day, right now, this is the position of black people. Now, I, as a man, I refuse to be an underling to a race of people who have held my people in slavery, and all my sons that's born after me, and his sons born after him, and his sons after him are going to grow up being underling to their sons and their daughters, and on and on. So when the black man and the woman wake up and realize that we must become men and women and govern ourselves, we cannot get along with Caucasian people in peace here. It has been shown and proven. The very fact that you when you made the statement that you wonder what may have been had we got the 40 acres of me. I'm gonna tell you what would have happened. The same thing that happened to Black Wall Street when we were minding our own business, and we built up all of that among ourselves, a black economy among our own selves, and evil, jealous Caucasian people won't leave us the hell alone. They won't leave us alone in peace. They can't stand to see us being successful, brother. So we cannot get along with them in peace. So since we can't get along with them in peace, and we'll never get any justice from their courts, why keep begging them for something? So you want to stay here and say, well, we fought and bleed. Well, you're going to be fighting and bleeding for this country to the day that this country is taken out. We have to get out of here. We must give ourselves justice among our own selves and our own government. This is the only way we're going to get justice, and this is the only way we're going to be a free people, a truly free people, having a land that we can call our own, where we establish our own laws, our own educational institution, everything that every government has. This is what we want. We want to make decisions about how the world should be ran. We don't want to leave that up to America. We want a seat at the UN Security Council. We want one of our representatives from the Afro-descendant nation to be sitting at the Security Council making decisions. We want a place in the sun like every other people have, independent nation have, and then we will determine among ourselves what's the best way to rule our people. We ain't got to beg the white America to come up with laws to give us money for our schools, and our black college professor begging Trump to give them money. That's degrading.
It should be inherently already.
Yes,
They're never removed.
Exactly.
Never removed.
So no, we want all black men and women who want it. If that's not what you want, you have every right to stay in America. That's your choice. But those that want a government and believe in your own people, believe that we can govern ourselves, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad showed us that in the first resurrection when we built a nation among ourselves where black men was taking order from other black men and women.
And that's the Nation of Islam. Now, if you want to look at that from just a general perspective, Black Wall Street. We came together as black folks, regardless of our ideology, and put our own economy together. But what it cost us staying here among our open adversaries,
who don't want to see us succeed. Now they'll laugh in your face and shake your hand, but keep in mind, our people must realize we're at war. And you can't see behind the blue eyes. You can't see behind the brown whatever. But you can't see the mind at work, and they're deceiving our people because our people don't have a knowledge that they're at war. That the enemy has the upper hand on them because they are they putting it on our people right now through the media, through magazines, whatever you call it. They're attacking our minds on a daily basis, destroying us as a people, making us look foolish among the world, making the world hate us. Look at them. They show our videos of the black men singing, calling our women bees and hoes, and our women bouncing their butts all around, half dressed, and you see black men walking around with their pants hanging down and being rude and disrespectful to ourselves, killing even the innocent among us, and then they put that all over the world. Look at them. But see, this is a direct result of post-traumatic slave syndrome. And our people don't realize that we are being attacked on a daily, hourly, secondly basis. Up here, Mr. Gomes. This is where the war is taking place at. And Mr. Silas Muhammad realized that. So in order to get us an upper hand, we need to get out of America into our own land so that we can save our people.
Now, I had another lady call and told me that some of the ideas, this is from the last time that you brothers were on here, and she was saying that some of the ideas are good, but she said she would not join the Nation of Islam.
Well, she don't have to.
She's a Baptist.
She don't have. She can still be a Baptist. See, this is what we want our people to understand. She may be a Baptist, but she a part of the Afro-descendant nation. This black man may be a Jew, but he's a part of the Afro-descendant nation. The Nation of Islam is an entity that exists inside of the Afro-descendant nation. Let's take America, for example. We exist in America, don't we?
Obviously.
But yet we're Baptists, yet we're black Hebrew Israelite, yet we're Muslim, yet we're Christians, okay? But the thing is, we don't have our own government. You can still be a black Jew. If you want to be a black Hebrew Israelite, you can still be a Christian. You can still be a Muslim. You can still be an atheist. You don't have to be the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam exists inside of the Afro-descendant nation.
Now, another question. At this place, would this place be in the Caribbean, or would this place be in Africa or South America?
Well, it would be throughout. It would be right now. We looking at places over in the Caribbean. This is why Mr. Silas Muhammad has asked the U.S. government, as part of the reparations, to forgive the CARICOM nations debt forgiveness. as part of our demand for reparations, because our CARICOM brothers and sisters over there, those are our brothers and sisters. Keep in mind, when they sold us and they took your mother and your son, they sent some of them
Right.
over to Bermuda.
And vice versa.
Exactly.
We spread throughout the Caribbean.
Right.
I know my family's like that. My father and his people, they're from Dominican Republic.
Yes.
And my mom is from Virginia. And, I'm native New Yorker. But, a lot of black people, as I said before, as far as they're concerned, they see themselves as being American. They see the struggle here. And as somebody else pointed out, literally, I had about 8 or 9 phone calls on this. It was a good viewing. But I'm trying to remember the person's exact words, but he made the point that now, basically, because of globalism, it's all one world. It's not like you can just go someplace and get away from other people. You see the point he's making?
I do, but that's not. See, we're not. That's not what we're saying, because all we want is for America to meet our demands. Our objective is to govern our peoples in a government that's based on justice and fairness, and us to start building camaraderie and business among ourselves, and to interact with other nations of the world.
If you have difficulty understanding it, look at Black Wall Street without interference. It hadn't had that interference in the first place.
Oh yes, that was well, we're in the 21st century now. At the beginning, before the advent of the 20th century and going into the early part of the 20th century, out there in Oklahoma, you had a lot of black people, black business people that had become very successful. You had a lot of natural oil and what have you, gas. And what happened, you actually had a whole city full of black business people, black entrepreneurs, and they were millionaires. And you had African Americans, you had a lot of Cherokee Indians, because, Oklahoma has a lot of Cherokee Indians living out there. They came out there, by the way, as a result. Every time I turn around, I'm seeing this damn buffoon in the White House. Trump was talking about Andrew Jackson. Well, a large part of that is a result of Andrew Jackson, because while he was president, we talk about the crimes, and one of the biggest was the pushing of Native Americans from the East Coast out to the West Coast and out to Oklahoma. And I knew it was going to happen. I knew it. I'm sure these gentlemen will be happy to come back sometime in the future. And I hope that we've given food for thought to the family out there. And I do call you family. And this is Bob Gums of the Concerned Forum. Have a good evening. Bye.
I was pulling.
It was a good conversation taking place, Mr. Gums.
Almost forgot to take my, as they used to say in German, take my tail.
Yeah, I'm saying the time. I said we need another 10 minutes.
Oh, no, this is something that has to go on for possibly even days, gentlemen. Because